I am very sure that if you're watching my channel, you know what the Gadsden flag is. I'm not a libertarian, but I have a feeling a good chunk of you might be. Nonetheless, here's a quick rundown. The Gadsden flag is that yellow flag that you see libertarians flying all the time, with the coiled snake and the "Don't Tread on Me" caption. It was designed during the American Revolutionary War by Christopher Gadsden, a brigadier general in the Continental Army. He gave the flag to Commodore Esek Hopkins, who took it as his personal banner. Hopkins continued to use it after his promotion to Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Navy, where it rapidly spread in popularity. As one of America's first flag designs, it has a special place in the history books alongside the colonial flag, the first national flag, and others. In my previous video on flags, I talked about them in the context of them being national symbols, but the Gadsden flag is a symbol of a specific type of defiant ethic that is common in the United States. The idea is that the snake is not necessarily the most dangerous animal out there, but that if you mess with it, you will most certainly be bit by it. This represents the basic individualist ethic of the United States. You might be able to use overwhelming centralized force to trample on the individual, but he is going to give you so much trouble that your victory will not have been worth it. There's almost a defeatist defiance here. It's not the same kind of thing as an army marching off to a glorious victory. The message is more like, if you come for me, I might not be able to beat you, but I will destroy both of us if you try, which is a fitting sentiment for people who value individual autonomy and liberty more than safe compliance like the Americans do. In the modern era, it's been taken up by mostly libertarians, though occasionally leftoids too, as a symbol of defiance against the government. Here's what's really funny as a non-American. When I was growing up, the Confederate flag didn't really have the connotations of slavery attached to it. Yes, we knew here that the American South was pro-slavery, but there was a non-distinct cultural sense that the Confederate flag was primarily a generic symbol of defiance against the government, which is what the Gadsden flag actually was. Personally, I'm gonna blame Dukes of Hazzard reruns for that one. However, there has been a push to reclassify the Gadsden flag as a contemporary political symbol, rather than a military or historic one, after its widespread use by the Tea Party in 2009. If you're too young to remember what the Tea Party was all about, here's a brief primer on that too. Obama won the election in 2008, and some rightoids in America weren't too happy about it. A lot of their rejection of Obama was based in defiance of left-wing economic policies that he wanted to implement. There was some socially conservative stuff in there too, but economics was the movement's primary focus. A lot of left-wing commentators at the time replied to the Tea Party by simply describing them as racist, partially because Obama is black, and partially because welfare programs tend to benefit more non-whites than whites in the United States. And yeah, there absolutely was some racism in the Tea Party, but again, it wasn't the main focus. For example, a paper in the Social Science Quarterly titled "Tea Leaves and Southern Politics" determined that Tea Party supporters weren't driven by racial animosity, but instead by religious evangelism. Nonetheless, it's after the Tea Party that the idea of the Gadsden flag representing racism began to take hold in the modern cultural zeitgeist. And to be honest, seeing it flown at both Charlottesville and the January 6th riot at the Capitol did not help the image. The Washington Post famously declared that the Gadsden flag is a Confederate icon, which is just retarded since it predated the Confederacy by quite a bit. But here's how they square it away. Little is said about the Gadsden flag's ties to Confederates, who embraced it in their own fight against federal authority. From 1860 to 1862, the battle over Gadsden symbols resembled modern meme wars. Ultimately, the Union sacrificed Gadsden's rattler because the Confederates had irreparably tainted it. This is very interesting to me because, like I said before, outside of America, when I was growing up, there was this fuzzy cultural acceptance of the Confederate flag as a generic symbol of defiance against the state, divorced from the particulars of Southern slavery. The culture has since shifted, of course. It's now considered a flag of slavery here too. And that process is now repeating itself with the Gadsden flag. Do you see the logic being used here? The Confederates were evil. The Confederacy rebelled against the government. The Confederacy utilized symbols of rebellion against the government. Therefore, those symbols are tainted with the evil of the Confederacy. The issue is, ultimately, that the Gadsden flag has other meanings and was used by many other movements before and after the American Civil War, while the Confederate flag really doesn't have anything else going on for it other than its connection to the Confederacy. A great example of what I mean is the fasces. The fasces has been used as a symbol of legitimate political authority since the Roman era. The Americans use it, the French use it, but also the Italian fascists used it. While its use associated with fascism is representative of the bad guys of World War II, its use outside of that time and place means something very different. Nonetheless, that doesn't stop anarchists from declaring America as a fascist state, partially due to this connection. The reason I'm talking about this topic today is because this kid went viral last week. Meet 12-year-old Jaden, who was kicked out of class yesterday in Colorado Springs for having a Gadsden flag patch, which the school claims has origins with slavery. To be honest, this kid seems like a memester. There's not only a Gadsden flag on his camo backpack, but also a Doge and a J-Rod for VP Revolution.
Based. Okay, let's watch the video.
Do they know what the Gadsden flag is? That it's a historical flag?
So the reason that they do not want the flag, the reason we do not want the flag displayed, is due to its origins with slavery and slave trade. That is what was, that is the reasoning behind why we do not want this displayed.
The Gadsden flag?
The Don't Tread on Me.
Okay. Which is the Gadsden flag? Okay, so he's, what's gonna happen if he doesn't take it off?
He is able to go. I was actually just telling him, like, I was upset that he was missing so much school. I'm like, so I asked if, can he just take his stuff out of his bag and go back to class? Like, I just want him to go back to class. The bag can't go back. It's got the patch on it, because we can't have that in and around other kids. So that's what I was trying to, and then he said you were close. So I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with slavery. That's like the Revolutionary War patch that was displayed when they were fighting the British. Like that's the revolution. Maybe you're thinking of like the Confederate flag.
Okay, I am
Is there
just
history
here to
that
enforce.
No,
I am here to enforce the policy that was provided by the district, and definitely you have every right to not agree with it. I mean,
because the
absolutely.
HYUK says that he's allowed to wear that if you go on their website.
So firstly, this woman here, I don't think she even has the authority to argue the point. It sounds like she's been sent in to enforce the policy, whether or not she agrees with it or understands it. I don't blame her for not wanting to lose her job and just keeping her head down, but that doesn't make it right. So let's go over the email exchange with the school board. The rationale they provide for judging the Gadsden flag as an unacceptable symbol comes from a Washington Post article. That article is about a 2014 suit with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, where a workplace complaint was fired over a hat with the Gadsden flag on it. The complaint was that the symbol was racially insensitive because Christopher Gadsden was a slave owner and a slave trader. He did in fact own slaves, as many American industrialists at the time did, but he was ultimately in favor of abolishing slavery. He simply wanted a gradual approach towards it in order to not disrupt the economy. The EEOC concluded that the Gadsden flag originated in the Revolutionary War in a non-racial context, and that the flag and its slogans have been used to express various non-racial sentiments. Why the school board cited this article as proof the flag is unacceptable is beyond my understanding. The school board then claimed that the Gadsden flag is tied to the Confederate flag and other white supremacist groups and patriot groups, this time citing an article about the January 6th Capitol riot, listing off the various flags present. Number 2 on the list is the yellow Gadsden flag, giving the same justification as the previous article, the history of Gadsden himself, plus the other flag that's commonly flown with nowadays. By the way, it's not exactly clear, but I think the reason this article says the yellow Gadsden flag is specifically to differentiate it from its red variant. All red, alligator instead of a snake, with the same font saying "fuck around, find out." This is an anarcho-communist adaptation of the Gadsden flag, with the same anti-government sentiment, but this time in service of socialism instead of libertarianism. It's a modern invention from the past 5 years. There's a gimmick account on Twitter called Gators Daily, which began by posting pictures and articles about alligators, exactly as you think, but it turned political sometime around 2020 like so many other things did. The original design of the red flag variant came out of this account, and they sell it on their store alongside other lefty gator-themed merch. The post that inspired the flag is still really funny though. Going back to the school board, they eventually claimed that Jaden was violating this rule with his Gadsden flag backpack patch, bringing to school clothing, paraphernalia, grooming, jewelry, etc., that contains advertisements, symbols, etc., that refers to drugs, tobacco, alcohol, or weapons. I assume that they mean weapons, since it's a Revolutionary War era flag made by a military man and used by the military, meant to convey a sense of defiance against authority. That's still a very tenuous connection. In the end, Jaden kept showing up to school with his Gadsden flag patch, and the school board eventually allowed him to keep it, ultimately claiming that they proudly support the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and that the flag has historic significance. Was this a case of the school board bending to public pressure after the story went viral? Or was it a case of some middle manager finding the flag offensive, and as soon as the higher-ups learned of what was going on, they reversed the decision? Who knows? The problem is that some activists on the left, again radical crazy types, don't simply view the Gadsden flag as a Confederate symbol, and the Confederates were evil, therefore the symbol is evil. To them, the Gadsden flag represents rebellion against the centralized authority of the government, and because the centralized authority of the government is currently progressive, rebellion is therefore evil. This logic takes several forms. For some really radical progressives out there, because the state is currently progressive-oriented, rejecting the state means rejecting progressivism. Therefore, the Gadsden flag is a symbol of racism, because the progressive state is anti-racist, and if you reject the progressive state, you must be pro-racist. Meanwhile, there's also revolutionary socialists who want to overthrow the liberal democratic capitalist state, but also pearl clutch at the rightoids who rioted in the Capitol on January 6th. It's simply that their revolt against power is good, and their enemies' revolt against power is bad. That's why they're cool with the red variant of the flag. The only other logic that I've seen some progs use to justify this is that they're simply keeping political symbols out of schools. I'm actually okay with this. Keep political symbols out of schools. But considering the constant flood of middle school teachers putting up pride flags and BLM flags and whatever the fuck else in their classrooms, saying that they suddenly want to be apolitical now that it's a Gadsden flag has to be the most blatantly hypocritical position I've ever seen. Of course, they will simply say that their flags aren't political, they're normal. They represent normal, good, moral ideas, while the Gadsden flag is political. There is power in claiming what gets to be normal and therefore allowed versus what is political and therefore controversial. But again, this just reeks of hypocrisy. Even in the most charitable interpretation, BLM and Pride are political movements, just as any other civil rights-based movements are. And again, everything is political after all. Their hypocrisy is the point. Their politics good, their enemies' politics bad, simple as. All of this is a sign that what I've said before about counterculturalism is correct. That progressives have become, in many important ways, the dominant culture. That the old traditional culture of 50 years ago is now on the outside. It's now the counterculture. Whether or not you think that's a good thing is besides the point. What matters here is that the counterculture gets to claim the moral authority of being the underdog, of being a downtrodden minority. Conservatism is a weak enemy right now. Nobody blinks an eye when you make fun of those old backwards Christians or those weird off-the-grid gun nuts. That's just par for the course. That's just normal. But if you make fun of progressive morals and ideals in the same way, suddenly you begin to run afoul of some very powerful machinery in our current society, which is all too happy to see you deplatformed and unemployed. The standard should be the same for both. Everything should be mocked. If that means I have to temporarily and superficially support right-wing movements until they become dominant again, then so be it. I'm not here for the left or for the right. I'm here for balance. I'm here for the laughs, fundamentally. Anyway, I'm happy the kid got to keep his Gadsden flag. And if you think it's a symbol of racism, then you're retarded.